And what we're going to do is use an image to draw an applique, and we're going to use some of the tools that are in the applique. So to do this, we're going to go to the block library and new block, and we want to do an easy draw and patch block. Okay? So for an easy draw and patch, what we can do is if you look at the tabs down here, there's one that says tracing image. So we're going to go to tracing image, and I'll upload this image to the website too. But up here is an insert. Okay, now there's another way that you can do this if you want to put photos into your EQ folders, right? You can go to your sketchbook and see where it says photos. You could, if you had photos, you could load them into this folder and just kind of grab them and add them to your sketchbook, right? But it's also just as easy to go up to this little icon that says import image. So I'm going to go ahead and import my image, and we're going to use this one right now. It's just a little star, which works out good because we can also do our quilting stencils with this as we go along. So I'm going to go ahead and say open. And, it says, where do you want to, crop it? Right now, we're not going to crop anywhere. And it gives you kind of a width and a height. I could make this 1,000 in height, too. Okay, and you can see the little squares around it. Like if I made this 500, see where the square is? So, I can also just drag these. Okay, so I can drag it to where I want it to be. And if I hit reset, it just resets it to the original height. It won't let me go up to 1,000 because, there's not 1,000 pixels here. But I can do this. I can square this up if I want to, or, I can just enter here and then, adjust here if I need to, right? So, or, I can just bring it in as is. Now, this lighter or darker, this is for tracing, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it right at 50% for right now. Okay, so I'm just going to say okay, and then I get this little, where do I want to put this, right? So, it tells me shift and click, or I can just, left click and drag into place, or I can just click and it goes, right? Okay, so here's my picture. If I click on it, it lets me move this around. I can resize it. I can crop it if I really want to crop something, right? And I think I'm just going to go ahead and resize this to fit into my block for right now, because I can always extend those lines out and just kind of try to center it. So, there's a picture that we're going to use, and, I can still adjust that lightness up here too. Okay, so like if you're tracing, black lines, then, 0 gives me the darkest one, and, moving up here kind of shades it out. It's kind of opposite of the embroidery programs, okay? So, this is my image. I'm going to go ahead and darken it up a little bit. And if I go to Easy Draw, I have all of these tools and I can draw, right? If I go to Applique, I have all of these tools and I can draw. So, but there was something that I think I kind of clicked through. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have to redo this because there was a message I should have gotten, right, that I think I accidentally double-clicked through. So before, we go further, I should have gotten a message asking me if I wanted to turn off autofill, okay? So let me close this one. And we'll leave it starry. Okay, so, and again, just block, new block, easy draw, and patch draw. Okay, and the reason I'm concerned is because if I don't turn this off, I lose things, okay? So go ahead and select this. Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and insert it. And just click and drag. And it still didn't give me that message. Okay. it should give me a message, do I want to turn off um, the autofill, okay? And it may have, because I've turned it off, it may have just kind of left it there. But when you get that message, you know what that means. And you want to say, yes, I want to turn it off. Because what happens is once I fill this in with one piece, then, it's a little bit harder to trace over. Okay, this is my trace image thing, and this is really just the image. I can crop it, I can resize it, I can add more images if I want, work table's not saved. Let's go ahead and save it. And, I could bring in another image if I want to. Okay, so you can build a whole scene here if you want to in this block. If I go over to Easy Draw, this is really like my patch draw, kind of section, except, I have, the option to, I just want to make sure those are all on. I'm going to fill this in and it's like a patch, right? What I want to do is an applique. Well, I'll take that back. I'm sorry. If I fill this in, it's actually where I can do my stencils too. So I'm going to do the applique. And always go over here and check and make sure that you have all of your buttons selected. Okay? But if I look up here, I've got these snap to grid options. See? This one is going to snap to the grid point here. And I'm going to turn that off. Okay, this is going to snap to the nodes of the drawing. And that, we tend to kind of want, because, we want to close up those corners. This one's going to snap the whole patch per grid. We're going to turn that off too. And snap to line segments. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off right now. And auto join segments when drawing. Okay, so this we generally want on, because when we're drawing, like when we get into here, there's going to be pieces that we're drawing, right? And, we may want to leave that on. So, if you find you do something like this, draw a line, and, you go to edit this, and no matter where you move this, it's snapping to something, then, go up here and just turn this off. And that's going to let you move this line around, okay? See, I can move it anywhere I want now. Okay, so, just pay attention to these snap to options up here. If something's not going where you want it to go, and you don't seem to have any control over it, look at those options. All right, so, we're going to start with simple things. And what we want to look at is you can draw this in any order, because we always have the option to reorder these things, right? But try to be logical. It's like embroidery. Like, these pieces are obviously going to be underneath these bigger pieces, right? And they're all going to be underneath this star. So, try to follow that, but, we'll start off with some basics. We're going to just go with a line. And I'm going to start in that blue section. And all I'm going to do is press and hold my mouse button, and I'm going to drag my line over here. And then I'm going to press and hold my mouse button, and I'm going to draw a line down here. Then I'm just going to press and hold that again and draw a line up here. And finally close that off. Okay, so now what I've got is this little patch, but it doesn't fit anywhere, really doesn't fit this application. So I'm going to use some of my editing tools. I'm going to go up to my shape, and I'm going to select this. And, once I select this piece, here's the two large nodes, right? If I just click on a node, I only get that node that is selected. If I click on the in-between line, that segment, I get two large nodes, and that means that I can adjust things. Now watch the buttons up here, okay? If I just select a node, I get like a break a curve, but we really don't have a curve there. I can delete a node, right? But, if I just have the node selected, I have fewer options up here. If I select a line, like right here, I have the plus. I can add a node. I can add a curve, right? It's already a straight segment, so, that's highlighted. I'm going to go ahead and add a curve. And then I'm going to zoom in here, because I want to show you what's really going on. And let me hide the participants listed, so I know it's just kind of you. Okay, on here, once I add the curve, it's real tempting to come in here and try to drag this line. But that's not what's gone on. What's gone on is, see these little nodes? I'm going to drag these nodes, these little sweeping arms. Basically, they're adjustment arms. Okay? I can move this node, and I can move this node into whatever position I need. But if I want to make a curve, I'm going to be using these little arms. And there's a little trick to this, like, let me move that node. If I pull this arm, oops. If I pull these arms out, I get a bigger arc, and I can, you know, kind of control where that arc is. See? See, if it's pulled back in, it's flattening. But I want to be careful that I don't backtrack that. You know, so as I pull this, you know, you can see where the line is, right? It's a real easy thing to adjust. You just have to know that these are going to control where that line goes. And the further, you know, the closer I get to the original node, the flatter it's going to be. Okay, so there's a nice little arc there. And, you know, if I need to, I can move that down a little bit to adjust. And there you go. And, you know, if I still can't get quite the arc I want, I can always add a point. Or I can, besides just stretching them out, I can always arc them backwards too. Okay, so, you know, once you get the arc that you like there, you know it's all good. And sometimes these are a little hard to see behind the image. But you know that they're there if you come over, and you can even grab like this, you know, sometimes just grab this and move. Okay? So there's my nice little arc. And now I'm going to move down to this next section. And it's going to be the same thing. You know, I've got this little node. If I click on the node, I can move the node. I have to click on the line to be able to get to that arc. And, you know, here's my, you can see the yellow here. That's going to indicate where this actually is. And, you know, you can see just by the length that I pull these, I have a lot of movement. So it makes it very easy to adjust these points. Okay, and then just basically it's the same thing with this. I'm just going to come in here, tell it I need it to be an arc. I'm going to begin to, you know, pull these pieces into place and try to get that line to line up as best as I can. You know, sometimes fewer points is better than more points. But, you know, like in this case, I'm not going to get this arc that I want, right? So I'm going to click on that line, and I'm going to add a node, and here's my node. So that gives me that little bit, you know, of extra that I might need for, you know, an oddly arced area. Okay?
Okay.
And let me, oops. Pull this down a little bit, and you know, I can move this node around to get finer tune adjustment. I can also add more nodes if I want to in between those segments, right? Let me pull that up a little bit. You don't really need a lot of nodes to get what you want. Okay, you just need them placed kind of in the right spot. All right, so now we're down to this last little piece right here. And, you know, I might pull that up a little bit just, you know, to have a little bit of overlap. But now I've got this last little line that I need to arc around that star because I don't want a whole lot. So I'm going to just create the arc. And, you know, just pulling it, you can see how that goes. It's a very easy thing to create. There's my arc. So let me zoom all the way out. Okay, there's my first little piece of the applique. And, you know, I could shape it around this if I wanted to, but, you know, that seems, you know, there's always a little bit of overlap, right? So, you know, if you really wanted to, you could add a point, shape this around, but, you know, to me it seems that little piece isn't going to make that much of a difference. And now when I go to color, there's my little patch, and there's the color. I think it's actually a little bit lighter blue. Okay, so when I want to continue to draw, you know, I go back into the applique, right? And the next thing I would do is color this green piece right here. And it's going to be the same thing. It's just, really an elongated section of this, right? And it's just as easy to, I could draw arcs, but I have a lot less immediate control with an arc. Okay, see? I could use the arc tool. And, but, when I come in here, I'm going to have, just as much adjustment. So it's whichever one you're comfortable with. And I'm probably going to have to, maybe add a line in here or a point in here anyway, right? Maybe not. So, I can use either tool. But these little sweeping arms are going to, let me control the arc a couple of different ways, by the length that they're pulled and by the position that they're pulled to. And, here's, if I'm using the arc down here, I'll probably pull that point, but let's go ahead and, draw another arc. And an arc up here. And because we have, the one snap to tool selected, it's just snapping into place. All right, so I'm going to adjust these. Same thing. If I select, this, it's automatically an arc. And I'm going to zoom in because it's always a little bit easier. Those points are kind of small sometimes. Same thing. It's just, I drew an arc instead of drawing straight lines. And it really does come down to what somebody's comfortable with, like how they're, how they adjust, right?
The straight line seems easier.
Yeah, once you get used to the arcs, it's a little bit, you'll have a little more control, but, to me, it really is a little bit easier to, decide if you need to add an extra point or not. I'm going to pull that over there, because you're really doing pretty much the same amount of work.
It just seems more awkward with the curve.
Right, because, like on this, I have to, figure out, okay, I probably need to add another point. But the curves give you an advantage on some level. It's a little smoother when you're dealing with very curvy sections. Like, you'll have some smoother lines because they're automatically curved. But what you have to be careful about is that you don't pull these around each other. Basically you're dealing with vector lines. And, here's, like, and I can still do the same thing, like in between these two lines, see where these two nodes are big? I can straighten it, or I can add a point to have a little more fine-tuned control. But you really don't want to add a whole lot of points to it. It's like embroidery, the more points you have, the more complicated it seems like it becomes to edit. And, so think about it like that. But, so here we have a little bit of overlap. It's that it'll be kind of up to each person to decide how much overlap is acceptable for an applique, right? There's always going to be a little bit anyway. So, okay, so there's my next piece, and I can continue to fine-tune it if I want to, like, this piece here, I could probably pull in a little bit more and arc it out a little bit more there. And, then I just come over here and there's my second piece, and I'm going to find, a nice light green fabric. And, it's always a good idea, and I'm sure you add it to your sketchbook. And, here's what's in the sketchbook right now. It shows the picture, and, you don't necessarily see the blocks because we're not making a block. We're making, an applique. Okay, so now these, it's kind of the same thing. When I look at these, I can use a couple of different tools. I can come in here and I can say, just give me this one, right? Or, if I want to do something that's already a little more arced, I could maybe come in and grab one of these. And, let's do the purple one first. Why did that not draw? There we go. And, you know, then it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be a matter of, you know, selecting your edits and, you know, bringing these nodes into place. And, you know, you have to kind of decide, you know, what's easier for you. The curves, drawing a shape, which shape to draw. You know, like this one to me is a little bit, you know, I can get that curve perfectly right there. You know, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
I can drag that into place and get that curve almost exact, right? And, you know, then I've got like the rest of this down here. You know, what do I do with the rest of this? Let me, pull this over a little bit. You know, what do I do with the rest of this? Okay, well, I always know that, you know, when I select a line in between these things, I can plus a point, right? I can still plus a point in between there. Okay, so now I've got this point that I can move and, you know, start adjusting into this arc. And how far, you know, how far can you go? You know, that's going to be a matter of playing and getting comfortable with what these curves do. Okay, then I've got this piece, and, you know, I'm not going to try to shape that curve because I'm doing an applique. My stitching is going to shape that curve, right? I'm just doing the outline here. And, you know, in between here, whoops, make sure you have the right block. I'm still going to have to add a point and, you know, bring that point up here and do a little bit of control here and here. Wrong piece, sorry. Let me zoom in there. Now you know why I zoom in. And, you know, so now I can kind of control this, but then I've got to deal with this curve here. You know, so at some point, you know, you might have to go, you know, and do something like select this line because it's, you know, way arcing out of control, right?
Right.
You know, there's, you know, a big issue on this arc, and I might have to straighten it. And then, you know, add a point, right, to gain some control. And then take this segment in between, you know, this line right here, and make sure you have the right, you know, right now I'm on the wrong thing, so let me zoom in. Make sure that you know, have the right line selected. Okay, and, you know, I need to get this vector line right here, and I have to make sure those 2 points are, you know, selected, and then arc them to get what I want.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm not going to get real stressed out about a little bit of overlap. You know, that's not a big deal. But then I'm going to have to do the same thing. This straight segment that I made, I'm going to have to come down here and make sure that these 2 points are selected and arc these. And then, you know, kind of move that into place. So, you know, and you know, the same thing down in here. I've got that curve going on. This blue piece is going to be underneath. Let me zoom in and show you kind of what you have to watch for when you're moving things around. Okay, hold on. I want to get this whole piece. You know, you have to decide, okay, you know, this piece maybe needs to come up and maybe this needs to come around a little bit, you know, how much adjustment do you need to do? Is it important that it's perfectly on? You know, because if so, you might have, you know, some adjustment to do here, right? Of course, you can always select this line and add another point if you want to be just dead on. And then you have a little more control.
Okay.
So now what I've got is, you know, there's my third piece, right? And we'll make that purple. So, and you know, and at this point, you know, these are similar but elongated. You know, is it easier to copy this, paste it, and try to stretch it out? Or is it, you know, just as easy to, you know, come in here and just draw it with an arc or draw it with a line or, you know, take a shape and reshape it? You know, I'll leave these up to you, okay? So, you know, we've got our a chunk of our applique done. We still have to do the pink and the orange. But this little, star, I mean, we could draw it, but we can also come in here and we can say, which shape looks fairly close to it? This one's not too bad, right? So I've got, here's my shape. And I would just kind of try to center it over here. And, then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to say, okay, here's the point. Here's a point, right? Here's a point. Or, if I've got extras, then I can start going, okay, that needs to go in there. That goes in there. This goes in here. This one can go over here. Okay, on this line, I really need to add a point, and then we'll take that point up here. This one can come over here. You know what I mean? Like, start shaping it out just by adding the points. Okay, so now I've got basically a star shape. And, from this point on, here's my line segment. Here's the two pieces. I've selected this line. You can see what options I have up here. It's giving me a break. It's giving me, a plus or a curve. So I'm going to go ahead and curve it and just begin to shape this. And that's where those where you pull these comes in handy. Okay? Like the length of these comes in handy. Yeah. Especially on odd shapes. And, I'm just going to continue to do this all the way around here. Okay, let's arc this one. And, okay, let's pull this out to here. Into here, same thing, come through, arc it. Do I really need to add points? Probably not too much. I might need to move some things around. Like this point, maybe I might want to bring down here a little bit, right?
Right.
And, maybe arc that a little bit. And, and I'm just going to do this, and it's just a quick way. You just have to be careful about, making sure that you have the right thing selected. But that's why they make undo, right?
They don't make enough of it on this one, though.
No, you know what? I think there's a way to set that. We'll look at that next time. I think there's a way to set the number of undos. The problem is, though, that it becomes, at some point a memory hog when you have a lot of undo set. So, that's kind of why they limited it. And, I used to joke when I worked with a software company, everybody wanted unlimited undos, right? And so I was kind of pushing the programmers and, why can't you give me unlimited undos instead of 50 or 25? I think it was 25 actually at the time. And, they pushed it up to 50, and I said, but I want unlimited. And the programmer looked at me and he said, if it's that bad, wouldn't you just start all over? And I thought, he's got a point. He's got a good point there. It was hard to argue with the logic because I had to explain to him, really, it's a sales feature, But and I understood his point too, it took up so much memory that, your program's a lot less stable. And so this one will give you, I think it goes up to maybe 50 or so, but
no, I don't think it's that many. I think mine it stopped at 4 or 5, I thought.
Yeah, there's a setting that lets you I believe there's a setting, we'll look for it in a second, that lets you control the number of undos that are set. And we move this little guy around. And you can see it didn't take us very long to get the star shape, where if we had tried to draw this, it would have been, a lot more editing, a lot more, tweaking, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And me.
I played with the program a little bit, and it was awkward for me working those shapes, trying to get them in this place where I wanted them, and I get confused between the digitizer and this on what I can do, and I'm looking for something that's digitized. I say, can't do it that way,
Yep, I've done that.
Like rotate,
Yeah. Well, there is kind of a rotate, but not like, like I know after a while you're like going, Wait a minute. Let me see.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I think wait, why isn't this working? Yeah. Okay, so, now I've got like my little star shape done. And, I'm not going to be perfect on the star shape, but you can see why drawing with arcs, like when you look down in here, see that, kind of choppy look right there and up in here. When you see something like that, come in and zoom into those and take a look at, what's going on, right? Because it's hard to tell when you're zoomed far out and you're drawing, but when you're in here, you can see, okay, I need to pull this and arc this a little bit here and maybe pull this back or arc it a little bit more, like in this direction, and, or just pull this point in a little and make some adjustments, because you don't want it real pointy. Like, this is not going to be that big of a deal. You can cover that up with the stitch, right? But, you don't want it to be real choppy and pointy. So, let me see, we've got that, and there was, like, even here's a little pointy, because we started working off, of straight lines more than curves. Let me see, the other point was right there.
Yeah, some of the inside ones.
Yeah. And, you can just kind of adjust them with a curve and pull them out a little bit. So it's not exactly, lined up perfectly with the picture. Nobody knows except you, but you do want to make sure that these are covered, right? Of course, you can always adjust those too. And you zoom back out. And, the same thing up in here. I can, just looking at these, I can see these two are maybe not quite as curvy as, I would like them to be. And I think maybe we had somebody join us. And, like this one, this point I can pull out. In worst case, if I don't get exactly what I want, the absolute worst case is, you just select this line segment, right? Add a point, and, just enhance it. Okay, so that's going to be a little bit better. I'm going to come over here, pick, my yellow and just color that in.
Very good.
So, it's a matter of taking, take the shapes that, resemble it. It's a little bit quicker. Now, you could try drawing that by hand, right? You could say, let's go ahead and, hey, let's freehand the star.
You end up with the same problem. You have to reshape it.
Right, you have to reshape it. And, but, once you get comfortable with these tools, these two, it's a matter of clicking between the two. And, for me, I'm left-handed and I write mouse. If I took my time, I could probably be a little bit neater, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. So let's see. And it kind of smooths it for me. So that's a little bit maybe less editing to do. But, it's still, it's going to take me the same amount of time to edit it unless I'm really, really good or I'm really, really comfortable with, like a digitizing tablet, right? So, practice these. Now, this brush stroke tool, we still have this brush stroke tool, right? And it is freehand, so I'm just going to kind of draw this real quick. Okay, and what the brush stroke tool is, literally it's, painting a swath, right? I can still come in and edit it. There's some kind of overlapping in there, because it's a sharp corner, right? But when I go over to color, I can actually say, let's color this in. But because of those sharp corners here, I have an issue, right?
You're going to get a gap. Yeah.
Right. So, and what happens, like when, I go to print, I'm going to print templates, right? And let's preview this. Here's my, this is my base square. We know how to get rid of these. But see, this is, yeah, this would be kind of like bias binding or a very narrow shape. But you can see I still have those little holes. Can I ignore the holes? Yeah, of course I can ignore the holes, you know. See?
Mhm.
You know, I can ignore those holes.
Right.
So, but, you know, but that's what that tool does. So it is going to give me, you know, some options. Now, I can also come in, you know, and I can select this. And I believe there's a way to, you know, I can curve the inside line. Oh, wait, nope, sorry.
Oh, I
Picked the wrong thing. Okay, I just want to make sure I have, yeah. Okay, when it's in original creation mode, you know, like when I first make the swath, right, before I color it in, you know, I can't get that. I can only edit, you know, like the shape of the swath, right? Okay.
Right.
But once I've come over here and colored it in, then I can actually edit the shape. So let's draw another swath. Ready? Okay, so there's my swath. And what I have control is, here's my minimum width, right? That's the minimum I can make. You know, there's my boldness. You know, this is what kind of points I you know, that's going to kind of like contour and move out, right? Here's my end options. So I can, you know, make those pointed, right? But if I go into edit here, you know, oh, I guess it's going to let me move those now. Huh, okay. That's going to move everything. And this, if I can click this line.
Didn't it just create that?
Yeah, it'll let, oh, I'm clicking the wrong thing. Okay, if I'm in creation mode, all I can get is that center line. I can't get to those outside lines. Other than I can change the shape, right? I can add nodes, I can, you know, that kind of stuff. But I can control this width by my minimum width. So I can make that swath pretty big, right? What I can't do is fix those holes. I just can't do it. It won't let me fix these holes just yet, those overlaps, just the shape, until I come over here and I color it in with something and come back. Then it looks at it a little bit different. Then it's going to let me move these things around. So, and, you know, I think it just looks at it at that point like a patch. Let me get that.
Oh, I see. Okay, because it takes out the line in the center.
Right.
Your draw line.
Right. So at that point, it becomes an outline, like a patch outline.
Right.
So, you know, so there's always, you know, you can always come back and edit it later. And it does make, you know, you have a little more control after it's turned into a patch. Basically, the minute I go over to color, it's turned into a patch. I don't even have to put color into it. So the minute I go over to color and the minute I come back, it's now you can use the patch. Okay. So there's lots and lots of little
that
things.
center draw line.
Right. And that center draw line originally, because it's a line when you come down to it, it's like your satin stitching.
Right.
You know, technically it's a line, but once I go out of the drawing segments, it becomes, you know, an area basically. So, okay, so now I've got this color, and, you know, we'll pretend like we did our whole patch, right? And, of course, we saved it to our sketchbook, and this is what it looks like in our sketchbook still. It doesn't really look like, you know, anything but the drawing, right? Because we're drawing an applique.
Would it be under... Is
that,
okay. Are you under blocks or...
Yep, sorry, you're right. Okay,
they are.
It was under photos because it added the photo. That's right, you're right. So here's my blocks. You know, here's the first one we drew. There's the second. There's, you know, somewhere in between. here's with our little thing, right? So, and, you know, I can always select those and delete them out too. And
Yeah.
I think we'll get rid of these two too.
Well, I guess it deletes them with the color, and then you just have the outlines of them. You have to delete them again.
You know, I'm not. It'll open up the outline, I guess, of it. Hold on. No, I don't want to do that. Let me get back in my picture. We want to get back to this. So I guess it'll open up the outlines. Yeah, I don't know if you can delete them completely from there or not. I should be able to, you would think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just have to do it twice, the color and then the outline.
So, okay, so here's our block. I'm going to go ahead and go to work on quilt now. And, at this point, this is now a block.
Okay.
And see that solid color that went behind it? That solid color is behind it because we're in, patch draw. So it's filling in the blanks. It truly is, filling in the blanks. Okay, so over here, if I come down to, this, I can put a color in if I really want to. So, but, that's what it's doing. It's just trying to fill in the blanks. Okay, now when I go to print this, right, if you're doing a 6 foot or 6 inch or, 10 inch block, right, do you really have to print, the block template? That's going to be up to you, but,
no.
Right. So, what you can do is get rid of these. And I'm having a day here. Hold on. Move. Delete. Okay, I have to select delete and then select the block is what it is. And, if I want to move these to consolidate paper, I just move them. And that way I'm not printing 8 bazillion sheets of paper for what I need. But that's going to print that at the size I select. And, if I say, you know what, I really want this to be a 5-inch block. I'm going to get a much smaller block, right?
Right.
So, I kind of control how that's going to print. And if I know what size it is, then, do I really need to print the big square? And, like I said, that's up to you. In most cases, you're going to just rotary cut that out anyway. You're not going to sit there and pin together about 20 squares, right?
Yeah, not like the old days.
Right. And I can remember the first quilt I made.
Cut out the little templates with everything.
Oh yeah. And then of course, the paper template would get shaved off at some point, right? And so then they would become grossly inaccurate. And yep, I remember.
And the template stuff still is that's curved and you can't get it to flatten out.
Yeah.
That roll stuff.
Oh yeah. You have to put it like underneath something for about 8 years to, flatten it. And Yep, I remember that too. All right. So basically, that's all it is to the drawing. And you can bring anything you want in. You can, bring, like I said, a photo in. Like if you want to do, if you have a picture of a flower or, a picture of a fence or, what you don't want to do is, you're not going to get something that's incredibly complicated on an image. It's like embroidery. There's a limit to what you can do, of course, with the applique, right? But one of the things that I find kind of neat about this program is see where, these pieces are going underneath, right? When I go to print this, even if I have an overlap, right?
Right.
If you really look, it's printing them and it's, you can see that little overlap I have in here, right? It does print the overlaps as well.
Oh, it sure does.
And that's so, if you wanted that overlap, then you got it. But if you make a big giant overlap, of course, you may not quite want that, right?
Right.
So, and to me, you always maybe want a little bit of overlap, just a little bit where you're joining things. Like I might make a little more overlap here, right?
Mhm.
Just to make sure that, everything else, because if you don't line something up right, then these don't line up right, and then it's going to change the whole appearance. So, I might make a little more overlap on, like this blue piece underneath, right? I may say, yeah, really, you need to be just a little more overlapped here.
Bump it up a little bit. Make sure there's no gap.
Right. And, and the same thing like with this point, I might pull that point up a little more. And, just enough to make sure that there's no gap here. So therefore, there's not going to be a gap when I come down to here because I had to adjust, right? And,
right.
that little bit of overlap is not going to make a difference in, the weight of your quilt. Now, if I made a big giant overlap, then, yeah, it's going to show, but, just a little overlap is not going to affect anything. And that way, that you have that little overlap as you align. And, rather than trying to be precise and then precise here.
Right.
Because, sometimes when you're sewing, things shift around a little bit. Even when you iron them on, or you iron it on a little off,
Right.
So, but that is, really in the scope of drawing from a picture. It really is determining what goes where and, what layers do you want. And in the event, like you pick something like, like maybe we drew this first and, then we drew these, right? Well, not a biggie. You use the send to front or send to back and just arrange things. So you know that this piece is going to be on top, you move it on top. You know that this piece is going to be on the bottom, you move it to the bottom. And, and that's it.
Have you ever done a negative photo so you have the darks and the lights? Have you ever done that on this program where you take kind of a negative of, say, a picture of a dog so you could do an applique using lights and darks? Is that how they do it? I'm not sure how they do it.
Well, in embroidery, that makes it sometimes a little bit easier. But, like, if you're just doing a photo, I'm trying to think if I even have a photo. Hold on, let me look real quick. I'm going to pause that. But anyways, that's kind of the advantage of doing it this way and putting each piece in. And then you have to decide. Like, like if I'm doing his face, there's the whole shape of the face. And then there's these highlighted sections. Okay, well, am I doing, here's the patches. Those two little pieces are the patches, right? Okay, how much of this is going to be material patched in? And how much of this is maybe going to be, stitching, right?
Stitching.
Because, you can
it
also
opens up a lot of
right, I'm kind of going backwards.
Doesn't it?
Right, like, if you're going to do, shading, how much is going to be, a pattern, right? Because we can also draw our motifs here for quilting, which, we haven't gotten to yet. But, so, you have to kind of decide what's going to be fabric and stitching to enhance it, like, to get the shape of his cheek, right? You want to...
You'd need to have a piece of fabric.
You'd have to have fabric
do
there.
a different shade of fabric in there.
To get your eye to follow the shape, right? You're going to want to do the stitching. Here's kind of where things change a little, right? And, so that would give you that dimensional flow. And the same thing with his hair. How are you going to do the hair? Well, it's one thing to put the patches in, right? But, how are you going to do, like, the flow of his hair, right?
Right. So that could be in the quilting stencil.
Right. And, although I imagine probably for the most part they do that by hand, right? They kind of decide it.
Yeah.
But, it gives you an idea of what it's going to look like if you do it in here as well. So, but anyway, you have any questions on? I'm not going to save this to our sketchbook at this point. You know, we'll just kind of.
You don't have to do that.
I'm
sure
he
he doesn't.
on now,
He doesn't
so.
want to be part of our sketchbook.
No. He would not find it amusing in the least, you know. And,
find his picture up on the quilt show, you know.
right. I used to when I did the singer, you know, yeah, it needs resized a little bit. But when I did you know, like the singer tutorials for software. Shane was in one of them, and Shane was just a happy little camper to be in one of them because, you know, Shane is, you know, one of those always on stage kids, right? Levi was 5. So, you know, everybody else knew from past experience that if I could get a hold of one of your school pictures, you were probably going to be in one of the tutorials, right? So Levi has this really hideous, just hideous, but I loved it, kindergarten picture with this smile. It's just the worst picture you could ever want if you were a kid for your parent to save, right? But I loved that picture because I have 2 other ones that have smiles just like that in their kindergarten picture. So to me, it was hysterically funny, and he hated that picture, every minute of it. So we had him taken over, but I kept those ones, right? So I go to do one of the tutorials, and let me go ahead and pause this. I don't have to